All right, y'all, we have to talk about something very serious. Apparently, the Netherlands, and I asked ChatGPT, this user ChatGPT is out of date, but ChatGPT says that the Netherlands actually did just approve for allowing the taxation of unrealized gains. And I know that unrealized gains and realized gains are kind of confusing, especially if you're not in the accounting world. But as someone who has a little bit of experience, I can kind of try to explain it to you very briefly so that you know how hard you're probably about to get fucked if something like this does come to fruition. And keep in mind that the Democrats have pushed for this before, and it's completely suicidal and just complete and total, like, bold-faced theft. There's no hiding it. It's just completely, we want your money. Because it's all about taking the unrealized gains, but, you know, there's in accounting, there's two sides. You have to think about the unrealized losses. Everyone wants to take the gains, and it's like, ooh, boy, we're making money, right? Sort of, kind of. But when you lose money, all of a sudden nobody wants to touch it, right? It's very much like, well, I'll take the good stuff, but I don't want the bad stuff. I don't want the trade-offs. We're trying to, and this is what society's trying to do right now, is we're just trying to get rid of fucking trade-offs as if they don't exist. We just want the good shit. We don't want the bad shit either, right? I mean, look at guys and girls. So apparently this isn't like fully passed yet. It apparently has to go through the Senate. I have no clue how the Netherlands passes laws and they do their things, but the fact that a Western country has like successfully even gotten through like the first part of legislation is fucking mind-blowing. So I'm using ChatGPT to kind of show you guys, and you'll see the language that ChatGPT uses. ChatGPT is actually not seeing this as bold-faced BS and is giving it a little bit like sugarcoat, and it tends to do this when it comes to very, very strong topics like this, where people are just trying to outright steal from you. So don't be fooled by its language. But when it tries to sugarcoat evil things like this, and this is why ChatGPT, while it's useful, it's a good place. It's kind of like almost like the new Wikipedia, where it feels like it gives you a pretty good idea of certain things, and it's certainly better than Wikipedia at this point. But a lot of the time, it's not always going to be accurate. And it's going to give you very watered down kind of takes on things, and it'll play down really, really bad stuff. All right, to demonstrate how fucking insane this shit is, I'm going to use ChatGPT. We're going to go through real estate because it's a little bit easier to imagine real estate, but this is applicable to all sorts of investments, crypto, stocks, assets, that kind of stuff that you can buy in the market, securities. But because real estate's more tangible and you can like actually see a building, it just becomes easier to visualize. So in this example, we're just going to go through this real quick. It's going to have a nice little chart down here. If you buy a house for $400,000 this year, and then in 2027 it's worth $800,000, but you don't sell it, you're just holding it, and then in 2028 it goes up another $200,000. Again, these are wild numbers. We're just making this stuff up just for the purposes of the example. It goes up to $1 million, which means you're $600K in the black there. And then 2029, it goes all the way back down to 300,000 for whatever reason. It could be like another COVID event. It could just be like a bomb goes off and suddenly that place isn't like safe anymore. It doesn't really matter, right? The point is it's below where you originally purchased it. That's where we're going to see the difference is absolutely crazy. The main key here is there's no unlimited government refund checks for when you take your unrealized losses. So using 36%, which is really high, but what the Netherlands is thinking about doing here, on year one, you're going to have 400K profit because it's worth 800,000 and you bought it for 400,000. 36% of 400K is 144K. So now you have a tax bill for 144,000 if this goes into effect. And sure, you probably just scraped together trying to get a house. I'm assuming you're not super rich for this example. Let's say you scraped together cash and somehow paid this thing. Now you've got this tax bill for $144,000 and you haven't even realized it. The money has not hit your account. This is the big difference. The money is not in your bank account. It is just you are holding an asset and it's speculated to be $800,000, right? But because you haven't sold it and you're actively using it, the market assumes you don't realize the loss until you're selling it and the money hits your account. The money hitting your account and you being in possession of it and being able to use it as like a liquid cash thing because you sold it is the main reason why we have realized gains and unrealized gains and losses. So somehow, let's pretend that you pay off $144,000 of a tax bill for something you didn't sell. If you go to year 2028, this is the second year now, it goes up another $200,000, right? So it's $1 million house when you bought it for $400K. 36% of the new $200,000 that you gained is $72,000. So in 2 years, you've paid $216,000. In 2028, your bill is $72,000. So this is not fun stuff. And remember, you still haven't sold the house. You still own the house. The house is worth $1 million, and they want to take 20 fucking percent of what it's worth at $1 million, which is like crazy, right? But they've been taking 36 on the game. So let's pretend that there's a huge crash, and this is where shit gets fucking nuts. Whoa. The value drops from $1 million to $300,000. People get scared. They don't like this area anymore. People, ghetto people start shooting guns there. I don't fucking know. The change is now it's $700,000. This is what's crazy, right? Originally, the government, because you were doing the unrealized gains thing, you were giving the government $200,000 because you were getting money kind of on paper without realizing it. And the money wasn't in your account. Remember, you still have the asset. and the money hasn't hit your account. It's just in your name and you haven't sold it. So you're not really rich. It's just on paper you have something that's worth more, right? Well, now on paper you have something that's worth less, and not only is it worth less, you've paid $216,000 in taxes, and that $216,000 in taxes you paid is already almost the value of the house at $300,000 right now, right? So what happens when you're down $700,000 for the year? Everyone wants to take your money by giving you the tax bill for $216,000. But what happens when you have a loss? Is the government supposed to now give you money because you have a loss? It's only fair if you're going to take all the money when you're on the high and everyone's winning, right? Shouldn't also your responsibility to be sharing in the losses with the person? Because if there's two sides of the same coin, right? You can't have it just one way. A one-way street is just not fair, right? It's just stealing. So if you lose $700,000 in a year, what's going to happen? Well, typically in the tax system right now, this is kind of how it works, but because you can shield a lot of things from this because we don't have this system yet in the U.S., and it's probably going to continue to be propagated and pushed forward, but for now we're okay. What happens typically is if you have a big amount of income or something like this from a business, the government says, fuck you, give me money, you owe me taxes, right? Okay, we kind of accept that that's what's like normal, right? But when you have a loss, well, this is where the water starts to get a little bit muddy because this isn't like common knowledge, right? Because people think only businesses can make money. No, businesses can lose money. And typically what happens is you do get a little bit of a tax benefit. You don't get money coming back to you from the government generally. Like trying to get money out of the government we know is very difficult, right? And this is no exception. This is why they're such a pain in the ass. But what they will do is give you like carry forward losses, right? So for example, if you're filing... and again, I'm not a CPA, but this is what I remember having a little bit of experience in the field is if you file, let's pretend that you invested in Bitcoin for $10,000 and the price of it goes down to $5,000. Well, you've lost $5,000, and the moment you sell, you realize that loss of $5,000, right? Well, the government wants as greedy and wants as much money as possible, so they're not going to give you money back if you lose money on that. And what they'll do is they'll give you a carry forward loss. This is like a personal return, right? But you get like a loss that you get to benefit and use in the future if it's over a certain amount, right? So they give you this piddly small amount of $3,000 that you get to realize that year, right? So if you make $20,000 and you lose $5,000 in crypto, you only get to use $3,000 for that year. But the difference of the $2,000 between what you actually lost, $5,000, and the allowed government amount of $3,000 maximum that you can use in 1 year is $2,000, and that $2,000 goes to the next year because you carry it forward. So if you're losing a bunch of money over and over and over again, this is bad because you can only use $3,000 per year on paper, even if you're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? Anyway, you do get like some benefit of having a carry forward loss, and especially in business, it gets a lot better. That's out of my scope. I'm not really an expert by any means on businesses and their losses, but I can tell you this: when you lose money, the government caps how much benefit you're going to be able to use on your tax return. When you lose $700,000, going back to our original example, where our house is $1 million, and then in 2029 it just shoots down to $300,000, what's the government supposed to do? Well, it's supposed to be writing you checks because it's a two-way street, right, between you and the government, right? So if they're going to take your money when you're winning, they should also be giving you money when you lose, right? That would be the nice, even relationship we like with the government, but of course they're not going to do that. What they want to be able to do is just pick from the good stuff, and the second that they have to write money because you lost, well, now they don't want to do it anymore, right? So if you have a $700,000 crash in 1 year from your house, what's supposed to happen when you've paid $216,000 already on something, and now your asset's actually worth less than when you originally bought it? Well, what should happen is you should be getting a check from the government saying, hey, here's $216,000 that you gave us, and also because you've lost on this unrealized gain $100,000, the $400,000 minus $300,000, here's a check because we are sharing in the losses while we share in the gains together, right? Now, if the government, this would be super obviously susceptible to fraud and all that, because the government would have to be writing checks out all the time, and then they would be getting checks for shit all the time, so they wouldn't even know if they're like up or down, really. It would just be an obnoxious way, and this is why we don't do this way, because this would be obnoxious to do this constantly, and it's just better, like, from point A to point Z, rather than trying to get gains and losses every single year. It would just be, for accountants, this is the most, from an accounting standpoint, this is one of the stupidest fucking things you can do, and it would make things far more complex. But if you're a greedy son of a bitch in the government and you want to take people's money, this is a great way to make shit up, right? Because you just want to participate in taking people's money that they've worked hard for and tried to put in the market themselves just by avoiding inflation, and you don't want to participate in the losses when people lose money. It's fucking complete bullshit. So here's what's such a fucking scam, right? The most realistic answer of what would really happen, because, the two-way street doesn't really exist even though it should, you would probably get a tax credit. And can you imagine what the fuck? Like, this would be unbelievable. If you have a $1 million house and it goes to $300,000 and you've already paid $216,000 out of your pocket because you didn't sell it, and you get a credit for $216,000 that you're good for with the IRS and the government, oh god, that would make me fucking puke. That is like that is such a scam of way to shovel money out of people. And how realistically, how long is it going to take for you as a normal person to pay $216,000? Again, I'm not assuming you're rich. I know that people pay $200,000 in taxes and more a year, right? Well, I mean, imagine how much Bezos probably pays, right? Or other people that have these seven figures, right? I'm just talking about the normal person with a W-2 that goes to work every day. That person is going to take years, decades to get around to $216,000 of paid taxes to the government to finally realize that fucking credit. That is mind-blowing. And plus, with the rate of inflation, you're using today's good dollars to give you a credit for crappier dollars later. I mean, it is a super lose fucking scenario. So this is just a complete fucking scam and makes me cringe at the thought that people are so fucking greedy that they could even astronomically think of this. So again, I've never been someone who's like loved accounting, but accounting is extremely useful and there is some credibility to it. But my god, this like completely undermines the entire industry. So it's almost like a personal attack on like accountants with this kind of stupidity, you know? Because you could talk about this stupidity, but no one wants to. This is what's the problem. Nobody wants to look at the backside of like what's going to happen. They just want to look at the good shit, and they don't want to look at what happens when you actually have like the long-term consequences of this. So if you've gotten this far in the video, you understand why this is like kind of a complex idea. And can you imagine trying to explain to people in Congress or like other people just like out on the street in the general public, trying to get them to sit down for 5 or 10 minutes and explain to them why this is such a fucking terrible idea? Nobody's got this kind of attention span. This requires a lot of thinking, and there's many unseen effects that happen, and the relationship between these two is extremely important. So when you completely just cut off one side of it, and you give us this one-sided BS, I mean, people in the general public just are not going to be understanding this sort of thing. They don't want to think about these sorts of things, and a lot of them they probably can't, to be honest. But this is just such a terrible, terrible idea, and the fact that people have even like suggested, like I think AOC was a proponent of this, and I mean, this would just turn the world like upside down, basically. What would the point of being trying to get into crypto or trying to get into crypto? People would get fucked. Like, let's pretend like Bitcoin hit like $500,000 and people bought it at 100,000. There's going to be a $400,000 gain and you're supposed to pay what, 15-20% on that, and you don't even sell it. You're just getting fucked with these giant tax bills, and they're forcing you to sell. So there's going to be no reason to participate in the market, right? We're just going to have to lose to inflation and be the complete fucking suckers that we've played in this game with the government. And of course, accountants are going to be the people who are telling people, don't fucking sell, because then you have to realize this game. That's why the whole system of like trying to not sell assets, park your money in assets, is so great, because there's not unrealized taxes and gains. So if you fucking remove that, well, dude, like what's the point of holding these large investments if they're not like tax shields? It's not like tax shield is too strong of a word for what they are. But you just don't have to worry about the taxes until you fucking sell it. So to put it on like an every year sort of thing would just be like unbelievable, and it's very low IQ. It just completely undermines everything about what we have going on, right? Anyway, I think that this is a total fucking scam, and it's horseshit that people even like think about this. It completely undermines people who have ever taken like an accounting course when it comes to unrealized gains and taxes and such like that. But this would just be absolutely destructive. So the Netherlands, I mean, they still have a chance to reverse this, but my God, I guess we're going to see things. People are just going to... The response to this is just going to be flight. People are going to run away and be like, okay, that's it. We're not going to be in the Netherlands anymore. Fuck these people. Fuck this government. We're not funding this shit, right? So the government gets even more cash starved because nobody wants to participate in this outrageous scheme. And then that'll be it. GG. Have fun in the Netherlands, right? It's going to be somewhere on the planet. There has to be some sort of safe haven for property rights and it being immune from the government. At some point, it would be nice in the future to know that this would exist. But it looks really fucking dark right now with all this horse shit going on. And remember, when people try to tell you this in the US, like, this is a good idea, I mean, you can just assume, like, nobody with a high IQ or, like, a good understanding in accounting is ever going to suggest this, you know? So, anyway, thanks for stopping by. That's my rant on this fucking bullshit. I have a little experience, so I like talking about this sort of thing. But, my God, when I see, like, unrealized gains and unrealized losses, it just looks to me like a complete joke, because it's like the blind leading the blind trying to steal everyone's money. You know, it's all it is. It's just a giant cash grab from a desperate and broke government who can't control its spending. It's so pathetic. Anyway, see y'all next time.